Welcome to Soulform. I'm glad you're here today or any old day that you decide to view this recording. Um, However, today happens to be the day that, alongside of a lot of different volunteers, I get to host a Spring Equinox event. And I just want to start off with a little confession that probably you might experience as well. And that is, while I've been working hard to try to integrate more of a nature based spirituality into the way in which I think about my soul's journey, linking it to the patterns of the biosphere and the land in which I reside, right? So how do you tether spirituality to the actual rhythms of the land? And rather than these sort of abstract rhythms of the church calendar or seasonal events, kind of cultural events. And I realized, especially in getting ready for spring equinox, which is coming up obviously tonight, uh, that I'm really not that in touch with the land. We're so in touch with the culture that we've constructed that I'm no longer so intimately woven into the characteristics of a land-based lifestyle that I'm actually, engaging land as it moves through its various seasons. And so, even though I advocate for that integration of a kind of a land based spirituality, it's still a bit abstract for me. It's still a bit about, throwing a party to celebrate winter solstice or spring equinox or the autumnal equinox or summer solstice, whatever it happens to be. And I'm not, like farming the land and noticing things in relationship to the land that begin to change the character of my spiritual dynamism or my soul's journey. So just a little upfront about that. I'm still working on that, and I would encourage you too to think about that, particularly this time of year, as we're sort of acknowledging the arrival of spring. I'm in California. This has been a rough onboarding of spring so far. So but I think our times demand that we kind of onboard a more robust relationship with the natural world of which we're a part, so we can, begin to honor it in ways that are reflected in our behaviors that have been obviously leading us to places as a culture that are so damaging to the Mother Earth, right? The biosphere. Can we find a different way? And can that be rooted in this sort of earth-centric spirituality? So that's that. Okay. I wanted to take a few minutes today to introduce you to an idea that I learned. I was in a conversation with my daughter the other day, and we were talking about an indigenous elder who was talking about health and wholeness, and talking about it from an indigenous perspective. And you probably know some of this already. I knew a little bit about it myself, and I apologize for the ringing in the background. I forgot to turn my phone on silent. Just deal with it. Um, so in indigenous cultures, and this goes way, 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 way back. So one of the things that we're doing for spring equinox is we're doing hula hoop dancing, right? But the hoop, or what's sometimes referred to as um, sometimes I'll call it a medicine wheel. Maybe you've heard that. Sometimes it's just called the sacred circle. But one of the most ancient ways in which indigenous peoples fostered a sense of connection to life was through the cycles of the seasons. And as they move through the cycle of the four seasons, they also begin to see that there's various characteristics of human development that you have to tend to in order to be whole and healthy, right? And so you can do this for yourself, but if you draw a circle and then put four lines in it, a T in the middle of it, you'll get these four quadrants. And in this sacred circle in which we move, that's why the hula hoop thing, right? In this sacred circle inside of which we move, there are these four parts of what it means to be human, and connected to the land. So, of course, you get summer, and you get fall, and you get winter, and you get spring. I mean, those four seasons are part of that cycle of life, right? You exist inside of that cycle of life. And they also connect those four seasons to four different attributes of what it means to be human, and that all of them need to be tended to in order to reach this sense of wholeness, right? So those four components are physical, the physical world, the emotional world, the mind, the mental world, and your soul's journey, or the spiritual world. So the mind, um, the physicality, your emotional landscape, and your sense of spirit. And interesting four, I think, to think about. And for indigenous cultures, they would say that, finding your balance place, harmony, wholeness, health, is somehow balancing your way into that kind of circle of who you are, those four components. And if you Google and look into sort of these sacred circles or medicine wheels, or even what's known as the hoop, you'll see various cultures interpret this differently. And I'm bringing this up for two reasons, particularly for the soul form crowd. The one is, it's good to remember that health and wholeness is not only about nurturing the soul. So even though I'm a huge advocate for that, and I push that week after week, and I work on it myself, it's more about noting the harmony that's created as you're engaging all four of those components, as you're deeply engaged with your mind, your body, and its connection to the wider body, your sense of your emotional landscape, what's going on, what's that emotional energy that's happening within, and how do you attend to that, and then the soul as well, right? So it's not like you can fix everything through just one bit of work, right? You really are trying to harmonize the way in which you approach all of those components as you work on your own health and wholeness, and that's really what we should be about. So I think it's important just to remember that even though you might be participating in soul form and working on that part of yourself in this conversation and in this kind of community that we've formed, we're not putting all our marbles in that quadrant. We're learning how that quadrant interconnects to the other ones. And so I have to allow body, mind, and emotions to have a conversation as partners with the work I'm doing on my soul work or my spirit work. And I think it's a super refreshing idea and notion that we often forget. We often tend to silo experiences and think, well, my religious journey or my spiritual journey, I'm really putting my energy into that, or maybe you're shifting over to your physical journey, but could you find a way to harmonize them all? So that's the second point I wanted to get to. One is the work to see if there's ways to more fully embrace an integrated approach of your spirituality with the natural world. I think that can help, right? As you think about this whole way in which the wheel works, the way in which the sacred circle works, and then acknowledging the components of that, both in the seasons of life and in the aspects of who you are as a person. And there's all sorts of different layers that you can kind of add to that big circle to develop a better and more robust sense of your own human health and well-being, wholeness, groundedness, balance point, right? How do I balance within this great circle that I'm a part of? So that's the second point. The third one, and this was one that I wanted to share with you today because I think it was super helpful for me to hear from this Indigenous elder as she talked about this, and that is, we often make the assumption, and I've made this assumption too, we often make the assumption that we're gonna kind of find a balance point and maintain it. we want to get to this place where we're, you know, there, where we've arrived, this sort of balance point. And what she said is that that's just an absolute illusion. It's you're not trying to hit your zone and stay there. That's not what you're trying to do. It turns out, and she's right, I know she's right, that life is constantly moving. And so you're going to find yourself orienting to the way in which this harmonization of the circle works. You're going to be off kilter, right? You're never going to be right in the money. So you're always navigating the dynamics of the way in which your own life is unfolding inside of this dynamic circle. Like the seasons are always moving and changing, right? No spring feels like the last spring, or no winter's exactly like the previous winter or future winters. It's always changing. It's very dynamic. And for us to separate ourselves from that kind of dynamism in the way in which we think about our own sense of self-actualization, or however you want to manifest or understand your spiritual journey, is not to arrive at this fixed, stable point, but to always be in negotiation and relationship to the movement that's happening within that dynamic circle, right? I had a young guy interviewed, Cole from St. Mary's College, and he put it beautifully. He said, he had heard this quote about trying to live into the seasons, so that if you find yourself in a winter season, on multiple levels, whatever's in that winter season for you, maybe you're, stuck emotionally somewhere, or you're frozen in your own sense of your, life's trajectory, whatever wintertime. If you're in wintertime, he would say, well, then be in wintertime, right? Swing into that quadrant and live there for a while, understand it, work the dynamics, but know that you're going to shift. You can be managing bright summer, or vibrant spring, or the quiet of fall. I mean, all of that is just the way it is. And and I do this all the time, I think we just build in this kind of unrealistic expectation that when we're not, like feeling like we're in the zone, we're kind of hard on ourselves, because we think, what's wrong with me? Why am I falling off the wagon wheel, like wagon or whatever? Sorry about that. What's happening here? And we feel as if something's not the way it should be, which is fine, but that's always the way it is what she's saying. And it's not about, it's bringing a little bit more patience to the game and awareness to the game, to know kind of where you're moving in the dynamism of this great sacred circle. Right? You're always in the circle, but it has these different characteristics to it. So what we're going to explore at Soulform, and I invite you to do the same, is sort of how, if you lay out, maybe you could draw one of those medicine wheels for yourself, kind of lay it out, and kind of think, well, where am I right now? Where am I right now, and where have I been in my life, to kind of see the way in which, like a shapeshifter, right, you're slowly moving through life with certain seasons that invite you into particular challenges or levels of awareness, and that's all right, right? That's all right. That's where you're going to be for a while, and then, but you're constantly working inside the circle, right? It's not like you're just going to land somewhere and ever stop. This last week, I completed 2 different funerals, and it was interesting for both families to watch that clearly, unexpectedly at some level, right, they might have had their lives in a certain harmony or balance, but because of the loss of a loved one, clearly that energy, emotional energy, what they're thinking about, what they have to do with their bodies, the way in which their spirit was manifesting, all shifted for a time and will stay for a time in the season of loss, right? They're going to enter into that space. And watching them move from their sort of everyday life into that season, I just know that's you can feel how this wheel works, right? And then over time, they will softly move into some other season, and there'll be other things that kind of emerge for them. I just think that's such a beautiful way to think about navigating your sense of well-being or wholeness, rather than the expectation that you're going to knock it out of the park and arrive at this sort of, you know, guru balance point that feels like you're there and nothing can bother you now. I think the elder from the indigenous communities was right. Uh, think of it um, as a, you could, like a winding river or whatever it is, something like the flow in and out of the many aspects and characteristics of the sacred circle. You're always in the circle. That always makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, right? I'm always in the circle, but the dynamic within it is always going to be changing, and to just embrace that and say, know your season, be in your season, and then know that those other seasons are present too. Those other experiences are going to be calling you as well. But give them time. Let them work on their own time. Kind of like the wait for spring that we've been struggling with out here in California, right? We're just like, come on, spring. But it's coming. Take a deep breath and just participate with it. So that was it. That's what I wanted to explore with you today, especially because we're sort of at this pivot point in a season anyway, and it's a nice way to pause and say, what are the importance? What's the importance of kind of paying attention to what's happening in the land that is home for me, and how can I intuitively engage in that in a way that feels like I'm tending to the patterns of nature, even as I'm tending to the patterns of my own life experience as well, and see what that feels like for you. All right? All right, that's it. Finally, the last reason I kind of wanted to cover this for today is I'm super excited about next week. We have a guest coming from the Graduate Theological Union. She's going to be talking about Hinduism and the role of flora, or flowers and herbs and kind of medicines from the land that are integrated into some of the formal rituals in Hinduism that invite the participant into another level of consciousness or awareness. And she's going to explain how that works. I think it's perfect timing as all of the, as spring begins to blossom, to imagine how the floral world might find its way into the spiritual world and see what that looks like from a Hindu perspective. So join us next week, won't you? And thanks always for being a part of Soulform. Bye-bye.